Well, here the story is interwoven. I got the announcement a year before the 40th that, hey, let us know if you're coming. So I wrote back to Saturday Night Live and said, yeah, I'd love to come. I'd love to have a +1. I'd love to bring my son. And they said, sure. So I got 2 tickets early. And I brought my son and I showed him Studio 8H, my dressing room, everything. And he met the Peyton Manning and Eli Manning and Eddie Murphy. And he was just, Paul Rudd was talked to us for quite a while. He was just stunned. And that was the fun of it. But because of me getting 2 tickets, celebrities like Billy Crystal could only get 1 ticket. There weren't any seats left for their wives or their husbands or whatever the situation was. So everybody got 1 ticket and old Kroeger got 2. So for the 50th, I'm told there was a Kroeger rule that unless you are in the show participating, everybody gets 1 ticket. But I had 2 tickets for the 40th, and I've been to the reunions. There's nothing new about celebrities to me or seeing how the show is done, but to see it through my 16-year-old's eyes, and he was just, meeting Michael Myers and everybody and Will Ferrell, that was the excitement.
This is Coop's Comedy Corner. Coop's Comedy Corner.
Welcome to Coop's Comedy Corner. People, I got to tell you, you're going to crack up. A few weeks ago when Bob Dubac was on, Bob said he was playing the Keswick Theater on his show called Stand Up Jesus. And he said a lot of people whine. A few days later, he emailed me, he got canceled. So all those whiners, that's when, if you listen to the show, he got canceled. He said people complain. Some people complain. He was coming from California all the way to right outside Philadelphia. But hey, that's crazy. That's how entertainment can be. But I'm very excited for my guest today. He was on Cooper Talk many years ago. And I want to talk to him about his career in SNL and why he moved to Vermont. And I know he's doing community theater and he's been a game show host. He was on SNL for 3 seasons. And, that's pretty damn good. And it's Gary Kroeger. How you doing, Gary?
I'm doing well. Now, why was he canceled? Because of the content?
Yes, we had talked about how he said, I don't know if you know Bob, but he's been doing one-man shows forever. And it was Stand Up Jesus, and some places got it and some people don't. And it's so funny. It was like, honestly, a week after we were talking about it, like me and you were talking, and he said, Coop, he sent me an email. He goes, I got canceled because I wanted to go to the show. And I was like, oh my God. So, that's the freedom of speech.
I mean,
anyway.
That's a whole nother podcast about the First Amendment, for example, and the expansion of ideas and censorship and reactionary comedy, or the reaction to reactionary comedy. But
it is crazy.
But I digress.
I know it's fine. It's fine because I read an article earlier, the article you've written about when Eddie Murphy was hosting SNL. I went back and I saw it was your Substack and about some of the material. We'll get into that. That looking back, it was completely a different world. But I want to know what the hell are you doing in Vermont?
Well, it's a longer story than probably its interest level, except. Well, look, I lived in Chicago, LA, and New York. That was my professional life, and then. At some point, I went back to the state of Iowa where I grew up. That was 22 years ago, because I just thought it's a better environment to raise kids. I was married. I had a couple of kids, and I thought it was the right thing to do, and I went into advertising. But in the last 20 years, Iowa has become very, very red. And escaping the partisan conversation, red means a devaluation of public education. It means a devaluation of environmental concerns. And it means a pandering pro-business economic paradigm that hurts working class people. And the state was just getting redder and redder and redder. Well, I divorced many years ago, but I remarried 10 years ago to a good old blue person from Massachusetts. And she lived begrudgingly with me in Iowa. And a couple of years ago, we just decided, let's go east where maybe we can speak our minds more freely. And we just found a place that checked all the boxes. There's room for the kids when they want to visit and stuff. So now I'm in Vermont. Now, that being said, Rutland, Vermont is a fairly conservative town. But there's this thing about Vermont, and you probably know this. It's as if the revolution only ended 3 weeks ago. It's still a don't tread on me. I demand my independence. I'll let you do your thing. You let me do my thing. There's sort of this consciousness that's still very revolutionary. And it's the way government works here. And I'm comfortable in that environment. That's your long
That's
answer.
good. No, because I know you've moved, and it's interesting because the East Coast is great, and I know I like going on your Facebook. So I want to start off about the SNL 50-year anniversary, because T-Sean Shannon's a good friend of mine. He was on a while ago, and he said how great it was. We really didn't get into it because he was a writer, and there's a difference. He was a writer, you were a cast member, which I want to find how that started. But what was that like to you to go back? Because people, it's so funny. People. My wife and me watch it. I watch it if she says it's funny. My wife watches it all the time. And a lot of people go, "Oh, SNL's not funny anymore." I go, "Well, it's not for us anymore. It's not for people over 60.
That's right.
It's for 18 to 35. Like when you were on the sketches, Eddie Murphy sketches and all the stuff that you did on that time wasn't for people who were 60. And that's what people don't get. But tell me about what the anniversary was like. Because I know you saw McCartney, and it must have just been mind-blowing.
It is mind-blowing. The 40th was mind-blowing too. I didn't think that could be topped until I went to the 50th. And I swear there's an ice sculpture the size of a building in every room. I mean, it was really opulent. And there were so many phases of entertainment, the big show itself, the pre-show, the music show. Now, I have to give it to you from my perspective. Look, I never became a big star on the show. That's not a secret. Nobody thinks otherwise. Unless you're a standout in the upper echelon of show business, you're sort of ignored. You're there, you're invited, you're not treated terribly. You've got your ticket and everything, but it's not really about you. It's about the Conan O'Briens and the Tom Hanks and the big stars and Colin and everybody and Cher. It's about the mega wattage. And so I was a little, I don't want to say intimidated, but overwhelmed. I was just overwhelmed. It's like you're talking to somebody. I'm talking to Steve Guttenberg, an established star in his own right. But even I'm going, oh, look who just walked in, Madonna. Oh, and so nobody's talking to me without looking around. Oh my God, there's Paul McCartney. There's Robert De Niro, And so I had my fill of it. I actually left the party a couple of hours early because how many ways can you eat salmon and on toast? How many conversations can you have about the show? And so I went back to my hotel. But in retrospect, like I got a huge picture in my office of me and Paul McCartney and Lorne Michaels. And, I got to smell his aftershave. You can't top that. So, I was writing the story of the experience as I was in the experience and actually looking forward to getting out so that I could look back on it and write about it than being in it. I mean, that's a weird perspective, but it's true.
Well, I think it is different. It's like going to a high school reunion somewhat. And if you were like a guy who didn't start playing football and a guy in your class went to become a pro, then it's like, everyone's like, oh yeah. Oh, where's such and such? So I get it. Now, but why, okay.
Oh, I was just going to say, however, for me, going back to my class reunion, I just had my 50th almost at the same time. I wasn't the athletic, god who dated the cheerleaders, but going back after 50 years, I have my hair.
Right.
Oh, yeah. So
Oh,
those
believe me,
super
look, I
studs,
know.
nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong. But the sign, these guys are a little overweight and paunchy and stuff like that. And I'm relatively slim and athletic, and I have my hair.
Now, what was great about the 40th? I believe you took your son to that, right?
Yes, yes.
The 40th. But tell me about
Yeah.
the 40th, because it seems like it must be pretty fantastic though for you to take your son to see a place where you were
Yes.
it's a legendary place. So as a father to the son, that must be an amazing feeling.
And that you just capsulized the whole thing. That is the difference. This time, the 50th, I went alone. I'll tell you a story in a second. Here the story is interwoven. I got the announcement a year before the 40th that, hey, let us know if you're coming. So I wrote back to Senator Live and said, yeah, I'd love to come. I'd love to have a +1. I'd love to bring my son. And they said, sure. So I got 2 tickets early. And I brought my son and I showed him Studio 8H, my dressing room, everything. And he met the Peyton Manning and Eli Manning and Eddie Murphy. And he was just, Paul Rudd was talked to us for quite a while. He was just stunned. And that was the fun of it. But because of me getting 2 tickets, celebrities like Billy Crystal could only get 1 ticket. There weren't any seats left for their wives or their husbands or whatever the situation was. So everybody got 1 ticket and old Kroeger got 2. So for the 50th, I'm told there was a Kroeger rule that unless you are in the show participating, everybody gets 1 ticket. But I had 2 tickets for the 40th, and I've been to the reunions. There's nothing new about celebrities to me or seeing how the show is done. But to see it through my 16-year-old's eyes, and he was just, meeting Michael Myers and everybody and Will Ferrell, that was the excitement.
It is amazing, when you're a celebrity, like, because of Cooper Talk, I get backstage to a lot of concerts for musicians I interview. And for me, it's like, I love meeting them, but I've already talked to them for an hour. But, like, I did get lucky. I had a glass of red wine with a guy from UB40 a few weeks ago. I took my wife and she thought that was really cool. But for me, it's
cool.
the same thing where it's
a glass of red wine.
But it's like when you can take your friends backstage and they get to see it, or for your son, because a lot of people don't get that, don't get to do that. And for us, like, because you more than me, because you're on SNL and you work with big stars, but I've interviewed big stars. We are in that world somewhat. So when you can bring someone in, it's so great. Because like my one friend, we went to a concert. She's like, well, where are we sitting? I said, don't worry,
right,
we're on the guest list.
Well,
and for you, but so who?
Oh, I was just going to say, the 40th was the beginning of my relationship with my now wife. And so I had the 1 ticket and I'd promised my son, but I'm still sort of paying for the fact that I didn't bring my future wife. And then for the 50th, I had the 1 ticket, so I still couldn't bring her. So she reminds me of that fairly regularly.
So tell me your path to SNL, because I know you went to Northwestern, but were you, as a kid, because I know you're doing community theater now. So you've had the acting belt for 50 years, but as a kid, you said you weren't like a jock or anything. What were you like in high school? Were you an actor? Were you in the acting classes? Because you're a few years older than me. And I remember when the acting classes, the guys in our school were leg warmers, and they just were, everyone's different. Like, it was the theater department. And our Cherry Elise had an amazing theater department. But that's something. What were you like in high school?
Well, I was the theater guy. Now, I was from a very small high school, which was a wonderful advantage, because if the theater's interested, the music students didn't go out for sports, there wouldn't be enough people for a team. So I was on the track team. I played tennis. I participated in sports, and a lot of the jocks who were on the football team had to be in the chorus of the musicals. So it was a real cross-pollination of high school types all doing the various activities. But my focus was always music, the arts, and acting. And there were 12 opportunities to do plays, and I did 12 plays. So I knew that this is where I wanted my life to go. Now, I was a funny guy in high school. I mean, I'm marginally funny. I'm just a little bit of the class clown. that's where I found my popularity. But I never wanted to be a comedian. Never in a million years did I, even when Saturday Night Live came on the air, I'm a freshman in college, I watched it going, oh, that's great. I don't want to do that. I wanted to be an actor. I would have been fine on Broadway, just going from show to show to show, and maybe someday getting some TV spots. That's the career that I wanted. But once you fall into comedy, the industry, at least back in those days, liked to brand you immediately. Oh, television comedian. And I would say that was my biggest hurdle in my career, was trying to overcome that sort of brand and find what I really wanted to do. That was more than the question that you asked. But the answer to your question is I always knew that I wanted to do this, perform. And if the performance is comedic, like my idol was Don Knotts. To me, there was nobody funnier than Barney Fife. There was no greater character. And I think that to this day, complete arc of pathos to ridiculousness to sensitivity than Barney Fife. That to me was great acting. And I still feel that way. And if I feel that I missed my calling, yeah, that's kind of it. I didn't really ever get that chance. I got close to that chance. I got some short run series at that chance, but never did I find the legs that my dear friend Julia Louis-Dreyfus, for example, found, because we went to college together. We did theater together. We went to SNL together. Well, she found that lightning in a bottle and had the career that I'm not envious because it's my friend Julia, but I wish that I could have found some parallel career arc.
Well, you were in a comedy troupe with her and her now husband, Brad Hall, at Northwestern. Now, why did you choose Northwestern, and when did you meet them? Because, going to college, Northwestern is a very big college. And, a lot of people know it's a great communications and theater college. I mean, amazing. But why did you choose? Did you choose it for that reason? And how did you meet them?
When I was in high school, my summer job was a resort in the Rocky Mountains. And I was the fun singing waiter and stuff like that. And this family from Chicago came in and they said, wow, what do you want to do? And I said, oh, I want to be an actor. Well, you need to go to Northwestern. And I'd never heard of it before, but I looked into it and I saw the alumni of, Charlton Heston and Warren Beatty and Anne Margaret and all of this. And I looked at the curriculum and the teachers. And I realized, wow, that would be an extraordinary place to go. Well, I applied and I had great grades in high school, and I had a high school resume that's attractive to a college because I did so many plays and extracurricular things that I got in with scholarships. And I'm in the theater department, but it was a little overwhelming because it's the best kid from every high school in the country. I mean, of course, there are other schools just as good and even better, but it was one of those schools where everybody was dynamite. Well, people who are marginally funny tend to find each other because you're in the back of the class cracking jokes. And that's how I met Brad Hall and Paul Barros, a guy named Rush Pearson, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. And we found ourselves doing various incarnations of comedy shows. There's a campus show called The Meow Show, which Steve Colbert and many others came out of. And we were part of the beginning of that. And right after college, we were still staying together, and we had developed a theater company called the Practical Theater that was doing serious plays as well as improvisational comedy. And that's what caught the eye of Dick Ebersol, Bob Tischler from SNL back in 1982. So again, I'm in the theater hoping that maybe I get an agent. I'm hoping that I can make enough money to put gas in my car. I thought, well, maybe I'll get a commercial or something out of this and get my career started. The SNL thing just came out of nowhere. And they said, can you be in New York in 3 weeks? And the rest is sort of history. Good history and bad history, but that's where the whole thing just shifted.
Now, so you did an audition. So it was basically they came and saw you because now that was during that time was sort of during was that the upheaval when Lauren left or where was the show at and how did you I mean did they just hire you on the spot? I mean, what happened?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the show had lost the original cast in 1980. Lauren left. Gene Domanian came in and had a very critically panned year. A lot of good people in the show, but it was critically panned. Dick Ebersol, who with Lorne Michaels in the very beginning was the network exec to create SNL, was asked if he could come in to save the show. He picked out of that cast this featured player named Eddie Murphy and Joe Piscopo and built a new cast, Second City alums, but Christine Ebersol and other people created the show in 81 to 82. Well, for whatever reason, they still felt that they needed to develop the cast. So they heard about us because our little show that we were doing next to Second City in Chicago was a big hit. They were told to come check these guys out. So they literally hired us on the spot. On a Thursday, we met them the next day in their hotel. They said, "You guys are hired." We got to New York in September of 82. We saw all the work of Eddie Murphy and the whole cast, Robin Duke and Mary Gross and Tim Kazurinsky was just terrific. And we asked Dick Ebersol, "Why are we here? What do you need us for? The show's great. You've got Eddie Murphy, Joe Piscopo." And he said, "Well, Eddie's losing interest because he's got a movie about to come out, and it was 48 hours. And we need to we are hoping that this infusion of new, energetic, guerrilla theater people like you guys will be the infusion of energy that the show needs and Eddie needs." Well, already too long story short, it didn't need that infusion. There really was no place for me, Brad, and Julia, and Paul Barros, who came along as a writer. Eddie hadn't lost interest. In fact, he's about to just go stratospheric because soon after that, Trading Places comes out and then Beverly Hills Cop. So the show has this huge star. Piscopo is rock solid. Tim Kazurinsky is just the glue that brings everything together. And the rest of the cast, there wasn't a lot of room for me and Julia and Brad. And if you, go ahead.
I was going to say, were you guys also writing? Were you writing? Because I know Brad was hosting.
We did not get credit for writing.
Sketches?
Yeah. You know, the dynamic of the show is this. You've got all these cast members and you've got all these writers. The writers want to get their material on as much as a cast member wants to be on camera. So who are they going to write for? They're going to write for Eddie. They're going to write for Billy Crystal later on and Marty Short and Joe Piscopo. So I had to write things for myself if I wanted any chance of being on the air. But they didn't want to pay me as a writer, so I didn't get any writing credit. I don't think Brad got writing credit either, and Julia didn't get writing credit. But we had to write our own material and compete with the other cast and professional writers. So it's a very difficult situation. I would say it took me at least 2 years to even figure out television writing and what the public is looking for. And things like catchphrases and recurring characters were so foreign to me that it took a while. It was a big learning curve. And there's nobody there to say, here's how you do it. Nobody takes you under their wing and says, hey, I mean, maybe Lorne Michaels does, and maybe he does now. But certainly back in my day, there was nobody to help. Now, I have to add, excuse me, I sound like a lot of sour grapes. No, that's just the reality of it. I'm so fortunate that I got to do it. I lived in New York. I got paid. The experiences that I had, I got to do some very good stuff, but I got to rub shoulders with the biggest names in show business who were so talented that I still live on those stories. I still regurgitate all of my experiences to impress those around me.
Well, here's a question, and I've always wondered this. Okay, and we're both big music fans, and SNL, and it's funny. Me and my wife were just in Cleveland, and we went to the Cleveland Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they had that
Of
great
course.
the SNL music, the
Yeah.
music um, exhibit, and it was
Exhibit.
great. But okay, so you're on SNL, and there's a band on you love. Do you get to watch them? Like how does that work? Like, do you get to are you backstage? How does that work? Because
See,
I always
that's
wonder what
the
the setup is. Because
Oh, it's a great question. And it's the part of it that I just become reverent. My first musical act was Queen. Now set yourself down and try to wrap your head around that. Queen. They've never done SNL before, and I don't think they ever did it again. It was their only performance. Freddie Mercury had laryngitis, and there was talk that they would cancel cortisone shot or whatever. He apologized for his voice. Well, Freddie Mercury with laryngitis is still in the upper echelon, the pantheon of great singers. So they did this phenomenal performance. But what happens is they come in on Thursday, they block the music so that Davey Wilson would know where to put the cameras. And guys like me would just stand there and watch, as they strutted their stuff. But it wasn't just, The Clash was on my fourth show, I think. Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder is rehearsing on Saturday, and Brad Hall and I are just sitting in the bleachers, our mouths, our jaws to our lap. And he said, "Somebody turn on a tape recorder. I got a song that's going through my head." And we watched him compose a song on the piano live so that he would have an audio reference of something to write for his collection of music. So I watched Stevie Wonder create 10 feet away from me. And I still, I partied with Robert Plant, for God's sake. No, that's
okay, no. Okay,
that's a
you
book in
gotta tell me that one
itself.
because okay. The reason I tell you that is it was so funny. I was over for a good friend of mine, Carrie's house the other day, and we were watching some college football, and having some good bourbon. We drink a little bourbon, and we were just talking about Led Zeppelin and how great they were, and we were listening to the music, and you forget that when they started hitting it, they were like 21. They were very young.
Yeah.
But so I'm a huge Zeppelin. Tell me about Plant because I want to hear about this.
Well, I have to tell you only very sketchy story about Plant. Well, it was the Honey Drippers that he came on there with. And, the party after the show, which is another legendary part of the of SNL lore, there's the show and then there's the party that starts in a New York club at 1:00. And you all drink and party and carouse until 6:30 in the morning. Well, I'm hanging out at the table with Robert Plant, and he's just Robert Plant. Everybody pays their respects. You can tell that he has an eye for the ladies. A young woman was sitting at my table and she got up to go to the bathroom. Robert Plant got up to go to the bathroom. And then eventually I had to go to the bathroom. And so right outside the bathroom, there's Robert Plant and this young lady in a tight embrace. I will say no more. I will offer no more details. But I just sort of looked at him and went, well, that's how you roll, isn't it? That's how you roll.
So what was that first episode like for you? Because it's a matter of, once again, you're very new in your career. And it's not like you've had a lot of TV experience. Now you have theater and that's in Chicago, but it's not like and it's live TV. And back then, SNL and any series had, unbelievable numbers. You think about like what All in the Family and Cheer, all the numbers they would get. SNL would get so many people. People would have watch parties. Like my mother-in-law, when it first came out, her and her friends would get together and have a watch party. And like when we were little, we could stay up late. It was our birthday week. But when you go in, did you? Because you said you watched it. I know you said you watched the tapes of the people, but did you really know? Like as you said earlier, that you watched it and never thought, "Oh, this is something I want to do." Did you know the magnitude of what you were getting into?
I knew the magnitude, but I didn't know how it's done. there was, you rehearse and you block, but you get together on Monday, you talk some ideas with the guest host, you write on Tuesday, on Wednesday, you read the scripts and you pick them. On Thursday, you block the music. There's some stray blocking of sketches. On Friday, you block all day. Saturday afternoon, you block, and then you do a live rehearsal show and then the live show. Well, that's still not a lot of rehearsal. I mean, you're lucky if you've done your sketch twice before it's live. And I remember the first thing that I did with Brad Hall, we were art critics for Tyrone Green, Eddie Murphy's street character, or street poet. I think he wrote a poem called "Kill the White People" or something. I don't recall the details. But we were these effeminate art critics who were just heaping praise onto this artist who had nothing but contempt ultimately for us. Looking back, I'm sort of embarrassed that I used cliche characterizations of gay people. I was not enlightened, or my consciousness had not evolved enough to know better than to play cliches like that. I wish I could erase that from my history. But that's not the story I'm telling. The story is, I remember standing there with Brad. There's Eddie Murphy. There's a camera one right there. And when that red light comes on, 20 million eyeballs are going to see me live with no delay. There was no 1 second delay or anything when we were doing the show. And that moment of, there's the light. Oh my effing God. Whatever I do now is magnified by a zillion. But nobody said, hey, this is too much for the camera. This is what you want to do. I only have theatric instincts, and there is a studio audience. So I know I was playing to the audience that was in Studio 8H and not the camera. I watched Eddie. Now, you asked the question. I remember this in slow motion. I watched Eddie so focused, and the audience gave him all the love and attention you'd ever want, but he wasn't playing for them. He knew that camera. He knew that all that mattered is what was perceived and seen through that lens. So for me, it was like going to school and learning on the job how to be a camera actor. But it was an overwhelming moment.
I can imagine, but here's something, and I wonder, because you are playing in front of a live crowd, and I do stand up, and I've gotten back into it, and if I do something, I did this show out in here in Amish country a few weeks ago. I ended up doing like a 48-minute set. I wasn't sure how I could stretch it. I took the gig because the money was good, but I go there, and when you're on stage and the crowd's laughing and they're with you, and then you tell a joke, it doesn't really work. You can then rivet off the crowd because it's comedy. There's that thing. What do you do at SNL when you are doing a bit and it's not getting laughs? Because we know not everything does. How, as an actor, because I know with comics, our lip sort of scrunches up. Like you feel like it's like when you get a rejection from something, you get that. Yeah. But did that happen? Like, what would you do? Because there's not everything's going to land a laugh, and then it's you once again in front of 20 million people. Well, I'm in front of 200, you're in 20 million.
That's another great question. And it's not something I'd ever really thought about, because those moments happen. I would say half of the time you might be doing, if you're doing a sketch that's getting laughs, there's immediately a crowd chemistry that says this is a funny sketch and starts to laugh at everything. This is true of any audience. This is a stand-up. If the chemistry is right, there's this organic thing that the audience becomes. If they decide, oh, this bit is funny, they're going to laugh. Another audience might not laugh at the very same thing. When you're in the zone where somebody said something funny, an entrance was funny, and they give you the blessing of this is a funny sketch, you just ride the wave. But the opposite happens almost as often, where you thought something was going to be funny, crickets. And now the organic audience is saying, this isn't funny. And they don't laugh at the next funny joke. They don't laugh at the next funny joke. Nothing you can do in character can save it. And the audience, the 20 million people, are looking at it through the lens, and they can tell that there's no response here. This thing isn't very funny. The best thing that can happen is the worst thing that can happen. Something goes wrong, you go off script and you ad lib. Then the audience feels the spontaneity is something magical. I remember doing a scene with, I never broke character. You don't see me ever laugh. I think it's a sin of performance. But Don Rickles we were in the sketch that nobody understood. I was Romeo, Julia was Juliet, Don was the friar. And Don just decided, I'm going off script. I'm going to make fun of Brad. I'm going to make fun of Gary's skinny legs and leotards, whatever it was. Piscopo comes in. And now he's off script. And the audience is howling. I think it's considered a classic, but it was a bomb in reality. And I think it's the only time, if for those of you watching at home, if you see it, I do believe I crack a smile because it was just such spontaneous calamity all of a sudden. And the genius of Don Rickles. I did a sketch early on where I'm Barney Fife, in fact, and I come into Mayberry, which has turned into this den of ill repute. And Eddie Murphy as Floyd confuses two of the characters. I either thought that Brad, who was Gomer Pyle, was Floyd or whatever. His mix-up just caused the audience to lose their minds. Spontaneity always saves a sketch. But my commitment, and I think the commitment of most actors and the commitment that should exist, is you got to stay with the script. Somebody wrote this. It has a beginning, middle, and an end. You have an obligation to do it correctly. So it's very hard, if it's not working, to dismiss that obligation and start looking for laughs. I guess that's my answer.
So what was it like working with Eddie, though? I mean, was he down to earth? Because he was very young and he was becoming the biggest star in the world. But he seemed as talking to you, he seemed like he was very disciplined and very into the craft. And I know comics who started out in Long Island. It was I think they were called the Long Island 11. There was him, yeah. Bob Woods, a bunch of guys. They were very dedicated to comedy. And so what was it like working with him? You know, you said it was a learning experience, but did he just have a swagger? Because he seems like someone who seems just a very down-to-earth guy.
I wouldn't call him down to earth, but he didn't have a swagger that was overly confident. He was exactly the right amount of confidence to be a great performer. When I got there, he still hadn't become meteoric. The movie had not come out yet. And I noticed that he signed his autograph on everything. He wanted to be a celebrity. He practiced his autograph. You'd see it on lampshades. The coffee machine had Eddie Murphy scrawled on it. And when you meet him, he's just this very approachable, somewhat soft-spoken guy, quick to laugh. But as soon as he flicks the switch into performance, his level of personal confidence of knowing the right meter, knowing the right depth of character, knowing the right timing was so impeccable that it was a gift of Eddie's environment, who he was, just simply who he was and his experiences, the people around him, and the gift that he got. He was 19 years old, of being on television and being able to express himself that way. It was just a perfect marriage of elements. And I've always said that I learned from Eddie to trust yourself and to be confident, because that gives you the generosity to share the stage. So Eddie always shared the stage. You're focused on him because he's so funny and he's usually the star of the sketch, but he never tried to upstage you, ever. He knew where that line was coming from and how it was needed. And you could see him revel in another good performance alongside him. So I would say he was as generous an actor as I've ever worked with.
Now, who are some of the people you got to work with that was an aha moment? I mean, we talked about the music, but some people, because they had really big stars, and you, especially being, a thespian, and that's your first love. Was there any people that you just were like, oh my God? And did you, not only when they showed up, but if you actually got to do a scene with them?
Well, I mean, there were stars like I'm in awe of Jerry Lewis. Everybody was in awe of his career, for example. But I wouldn't say that he was a particularly generous performer, and I didn't have much to do with him. I was in awe of people like him, but the person that I really enjoyed was someone like Howard Hessman, from WKRP, and he came out of improv comedy. And so I did 2 or 3 sketches with him. He did the show twice. And it was like being on stage with another comedic improvisational actor. We both knew our lines. We didn't use cue cards, and we listened and played off of each other. That for me was the best experience in all 3 years, was doing a couple of scenes with Howard Hessman, because we were 2 actors listening to each other on stage with a camera. And that was my best experience, bar none. Christopher Reeve was generous that way too. He was very focused and very generous as an actor, and I did a couple of things with him that are my proudest achievements. And it's because here he was the star, but he wanted you to star. It was really terrific. I would say those are my 2 favorite.
Okay, I got to ask you this because a few weeks ago, a guy used to be in the morning zoo in Philly, Pat Godwin, he's on the Bob and Tom show now, tells a great story about opening up for Don McLean, Bye Bye Miss America Pie. And Don McLean's a total prick. He's a total prick. And this story is one of the best stories I've ever heard. And it's the story about Pat. It was just tell me, I know you have a story. Didn't you have a clash with someone on set, or did you not get along with someone? I know there's a story.
You're thinking of Robert Blake. Are you thinking of Robert Blake?
But you and no. Well, didn't you not get along with someone?
Well, no, I never didn't get along with anybody.
A guest host. I thought a guest host rubbed you the wrong way, or something.
Here's what you're remembering, because I got along with everybody. Robert Blake is the host, Beretta, and he comes in on Monday, and I had this idea for a sketch. I don't remember it at all anymore, but I wanted to do a Beretta-like character, but he's a college professor, an English professor, and he's got a cockatoo, and the cockatoo is actually the professor. The cockatoo has all of the answers, and I thought it was a clever juxtaposition, unexpected, with the character that everybody recognizes. And he took the script and he said, "You want to know what I think of this?" And he wiped his, his ASS with, and he wiped his ass with it, and he threw it at me, and it hit me in the face. And I know a lot of people in the room were shocked, going, "What a rude gesture, poor Gary." I remember in the moment going, "Wow, that's how people reject scripts in show business." I mean, I didn't take it personally. I thought, okay, I guess we won't be doing that. But it didn't hurt my feelings. But as the years have gone by, others have told the story from their perspective, and they thought it was the rudest thing in the world. And I'm told that he was banned from the show from that behavior. But from my perspective, I'm this neophyte. I thought, well, I guess that's the way they do it here. I think I was impressed with his passion. But that's the only conflict I ever had.
That's the story I was thinking of. Now, was your last season what Martin Short came on?
Yeah. Now I survived
what
that.
Was Martin Short?
Okay. Say again?
Tell me.
Oh,
no, tell me about Martin Short joining the cast.
Year 3, a lot of people were let go. Dick Ebersol felt that the show, without Eddie Murphy any longer with the show, Piscopo was leaving the show. He thought it needed an infusion of superstars, and he hired Chris Guest and Marty Short and Billy Crystal and Rich Hall and et cetera, Pam Stevenson. And he kept some continuity by keeping me, Julia, Mary Gross, and Jim Belushi. that year is so different for me than the previous two. The color was different, the look was different, the comedy was different. The reviews were a little bit stronger, I think, ultimately. I didn't get a lot to do, but I was included more. You know, Chris Guest would come up to me and say, "Hey, I'm doing this thing. Can you come up with an imitation of Robert Mitchum?" Or Billy Crystal will say, "I'm doing the Joe Franklin show. I got this idea for an Alan Alda impersonator. Can you come up with Alan Alda?" So they would throw me these things knowing that I had certain abilities to come through very quickly. So the fact that I was included in their entourage, even though they were the stars of the show, made that year very special for me.
So when are you gone? When did you leave the show? What happened?
Well, the show left me and everybody else. Marty, Billy, and Chris did not want to do the show more than a year. And so when they left, Dick Ebersol put in his pink slip notice. And from what I'm told, the show was over in 1985. Dick was going to put on Saturday night's main event wrestling or something like that. And then in this last moment of negotiation, Lorne Michaels was coaxed into coming back. And he said, "I only come back if I start over the way I did it the first time." So there was no future at SNL for me or for anybody who was on the show at that point. So that's when it was over. And then the show came on again. I'm name dropping, but I'm watching the first show of the next season in Norman Lear's den with Rob Reiner and others. And we thought the show stank that first episode back in 1986. We thought this, you know, it had Robert Downey Jr., Anthony Michael Hall, but it lacked chemistry and focus, we thought. Now, Lorne, being the genius that he is, knows how to build from his own farm club and created a magnificent show again, which has had legs for the next 40 years to follow. But yeah, I didn't get a choice. It was like, okay, thank you.
So when something like that happens, how do you take that mentally? Because that for 3 years, that is your identity. And I know as you said, it's something that you never sought out. That's what you wanted to do, but I'm sure you loved it because you met all these people. You did a great show. But how do you mentally take that? Bottom line is, I always explain performers, we're 50% narcissistic and we're 50% insecure, because we sit there and we're like, "Oh, I want this adoration." When you get it, you go, "I don't deserve this adoration." Or did I do something wrong? So how did you take that when you were all of a sudden you were?
I was very sad, but I wasn't devastated. I wasn't devastated because I knew, Marty and Billy and everybody said, "We're not continuing on with the show." And I knew they weren't going to anchor a show around me. I didn't have enough time to develop that way. And so I knew it was going to be over. So I wasn't devastated by that fact. But I was saddened because if the show had continued, if Marty and Billy and Dick and everybody decided to stay, I felt confident that I would stay with it. And I was really learning how to do it. I finally figured out, okay, this is how you sit in the writer's room. This is how you present your stuff. I knew the camera now. I knew how to hang out with Marty and Billy. I figured it out. And I felt that if I had had another year and another year, I would have had the opportunity to accomplish what anybody's dream would have been, to emerge on the show and to have enough equity as an actor to really have a foundation for your career. So I was sad about that. I was disappointed, but not surprised or devastated. And I pulled up my bootstraps and moved right out of New York and went to LA. The value that I had, having been on SNL, that other actors often don't get, is I got an agent immediately. ICM, I had a big agency. So I had opportunities now to start to be an actor in LA, but not with the body of recognition that I had hoped to get out of SNL.
Well, I know eventually you parlay down the road into hosting.
Yeah.
And what is that like to host? I know hosting is so funny. People don't know you shoot like 5 shows in a day and you get paid
Yeah.
well, and then it's like
Seven.
you have free time. But seven, okay, 7 shows in a day. What is that like though? Is it easier for you to host because you do have that live
Yeah.
experience? Like a friend of mine worked on American Idol, and he said Ryan Seacrest is just so damn good at being a host. Like that's all he ever wanted to be, and he just
Right.
nails it. He goes, "You watch this guy; it's like a one take Jake." Was it easy for you to become a host, and what did you find that fulfilling?
Well, it was easy for me to become a host, but back in those days, this isn't the case anymore. Back in those days, you were pigeonholed, you were branded. You're a TV actor. You're an actor who does commercials. You're a movie actor. They don't cross paths. Very rare that a Tom Hanks emerges out of that, where you started in TV and you worked in movies. It happens all the time now. Game show hosts was the don't ever do that. You're a game show host, you won't even get a sitcom pilot. You certainly you won't even get a B movie. So there were these separate silos. Well, I have this work ethic coming from the Midwest, I think. I just want to work, and I want to work at things that I'm good at. And there weren't enough opportunities coming up to the plate for me, very few in movies. But the TV, I did some TV pilots, I did some short run series. Getting a TV show on the air and then to get picked up for a season and another season is like winning the lottery. It's really hard. The odds are stacked against you. And my manager said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to work." "Well, they like you in the game show arena." "Okay, let's give it a try." So I did Beat the Clock. I did Card Sharks. I did Whammy as the announcer, the Newlywed Game, and I was very good at it. And to reiterate what you said, I was really well paid to work really hard days, but only 2 days a week. And so I made a great living working 2 or 3 difficult days a week and had a great life. And basically, my job was to give cash and prizes to nice people who were on vacation. You know, that's not a sucky career at all. It hurt me probably in terms of where my career could have gone as an actor. I'm sure it did. But if you asked me now, if you gave me choices right now of jobs that were satisfying, and a game show host was one of them, I'd pick a game show host in a heartbeat. I had a blast.
See, that's awesome.
I had a
Now,
blast.
you're in Vermont and you're doing theater. You have rehearsal. Now tell me about this. I mean, it must be very weird for someone to sit there, they go into community theater in Vermont and all of a sudden, holy crap, there's a guy from SNL. I mean, how did you get involved? Because I know you were doing it in Iowa too, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm leaving in right after Thanksgiving to go back to Iowa, where I'll be for 2 months to direct a farce called The Cottage back at the theater where I did 20 years of community theater. So that's really my community theater experience is still back in Iowa, where I'm going back. The funny thing is, and you know this, if you're performing in front of an audience, whether you're a stand-up, a game show host, community theater, or Broadway, you are lending your craft to people who came to have a special experience. So when I'm in a house with 400 people from the Midwest who wouldn't know Moliere from Shakespeare, but they're enjoying what I'm doing and they're laughing or they're thinking and they clap or give you a standing ovation at the end, it's as fulfilling as anything you can do. I mean, I've often said when I did The Music Man a few years ago, and the audience loved it so much when they stood on their feet, I thought, it's no better experience on Broadway. I mean, if you're in a Broadway house and the audience loves it, you don't feel better than I could possibly feel right there. So, I mean, this is my way of saying, if you perform, you find your way to perform. You find your way to give what I think is a gift that you have, a gift that I have, to communicate to people something to make them feel or think a little bit differently. And you can get that telling jokes at a barber shop, community theater, or television, or hosting a game show. Certainly a stand-up comedy, because you own your show. You are your show.
I have one final question. I always ask this to my guests. Looking back, and it can be personal, it can be entertainment. When you look back, what are a few things that you are really proud about what you've done? What are some things that make you internally really proud? Not all the kudos of the bullshit in this, but what are things that make you proud?
Now we're being career specific, because I would tell you being a father is the proudest accomplishment.
No, career or personal. Career and personal.
I mean, everything leads with my family. Everything leads with my children. I believe I'm an excellent husband and I'm an excellent father. I'm an excellent community member because I've always put my feet on the pavement. I put my mouth. What's the cliche I'm looking for? I put my action where my mouth is, and I really work hard to help the underprivileged, the marginalized, the homeless people. I'm very active in politics, not because I shun the power of politics in favor of the reform of politics, the way politics can help people when it actually works. And I'm very proud of the work that I've done. I've run for office. I've never won, but I've worked very hard to shape the conversation so that people may glean from it some hope. That's what I'm most proud of. In my career, I'm most proud of the fact that I was never an asshole. And that's a big deal. You know, Dick Ebersol called me no problem Kroeger. Well, that might have gotten in my way because the squeaky wheel does get the grease in show business. But I was never a squeaky wheel because it was more important to me to have the relationships, the sincerity, and the trust of people who knew I wouldn't stab them in the back. And I think on my dying day, if that same question is asked, I'm going to say, my kids, and I wasn't an asshole.
That's awesome, Gary. Man, I want to thank you for taking the time. People, go look up Gary Kroeger on IMDb. Find the old SNL sketches. Don't forget this. I want to thank Jimmy Corhan, the producer. He does a great job over there at Comedy Trainwreck. You know, he supports a lot of Philly comedians and some other great shows. He's got shows by Coleman Green, Chica Loca, John Kensel, the legendary Wid, a bunch of other shows. Go check out Comedy Trainwreck on YouTube. Subscribe to this show. Also, go to my one website, coopertalk.net. You can find over 1,050 episodes there. Also, you can find a new YouTube podcast I'm hosting called Lawsuits and Lessons. My friend, entertainment lawyer turned business lawyer, John Fogerholm. It's every 2 weeks we record that. It's produced by Mission Matters out of Beverly Hills. And finally, the Coop Tank is my award-winning local business podcast. I shoot the shit with 3 local business owners. We talk about motivation, inspiration, and all that good stuff. So please go check them out. And CoopsComedyCorner.com. You can get some Cooper Talk, Coop's Comedy Corner, and Coop Tank swag. Anyway, check out Gary Kroeger. Thank you so much, Gary. Thank you, Jimmy Corhan. If I don't see people, have a great Thanksgiving.
Coop's Comedy Corner.